Hey students, this is Minsel. The title of your next assignment is What's Your Name? And how you are going to complete this assignment is you are going to write your name out. So I'll show you my example. My name is Alexia, so I'm just going to do Lexi, my nickname. And then when you have your name written out, you're going to start thinking of words that correspond with the letters of your name. So I'll think of all the words I can think of that start with an L. Same thing for E, X, and I. I would try to think of imagery that you, or items or objects or imagery that you actually find intriguing or interesting, because this is going to be basically like a nameplate for yourself. So you should think about things you enjoy or intrigue you. I know you're kind of limited because you have to make it start with a letter, but there's lots and lots of words that start with an L and E, X. Letters like that might be a little more challenging. You might have to be creative. So after you think of as many words as you can that correspond with each letter of your name, you're going to start drawing out those words. So this is one I started sketching last year that corresponded with the Minsel. I didn't finish it, but I just want to show you. I'm lightly sketching the objects that I thought of. So M is for mug. I chose that because I really love coffee and tea. And I always usually have a mug by me. I did an eye just because I enjoy drawing eyes. I think they're cool. An N, I think I was going to do a night sky in the back. Can't remember. It's what I was doing last year. T, I was going to do a tiger because I also think they're very cool. Z, I was going to make these Z's. I was kind of sketching it. It's hard to see. And then I just had to think of an E and an L. I can't remember what I was going to do for the E, but it was going to fill this area, and then this was going to be a ladder. So that was my sketch from last year. You could see I did it very, very lightly because you're going to do this mostly in colored pencil. Okay, so I'm going to show you some examples. This student, her name was Saya. She did a star, yogurt, alien, and a hound. And then, of course, she thought about the background as well. What else do we got here? This is Sonia, shell, orange, Nintendo, yarn, and she made the yarn kind of go throughout the page, and then alien. Who's this? Aiden. I don't know all the names of the characters. This is clearly an Altoid can, but this corresponds with his name. I love this one. Noah. So this is supposed to be Nemo. Oreos, Avenger sign, and hamburger. And I'll show you just a couple more. Alexis. Astronaut, lollipop, elf, xylophone, ice cream, scissors. And then this one is just really cool. This one was with ink pen. So one thing I did want to show y'all when y'all are drawing on your page is going to be a little longer. Obviously, if you're doing this at your house, just cut a piece of paper a little longer where the width is a lot shorter than the length. I would guess this is about 6, maybe 5, 6 inches by 11 or 12. So just cut a longer piece of paper. Or just do it in your sketchbook. Just don't use the whole page unless you really want to. I did want to show you how to fill up the page. So sometimes what happens when kids are drawing on their page is they draw very small and then they have a lot of background to fill up. So this one is kind of an example. This one is very beautiful, but you can see the images are a little smaller. So she filled the background a bit more with the yarn, but she still had a lot of background area to fill. And you could leave the background more open to fill it in creative ways, but I think this one is very strong in the fact that the student drew it very large, to the point where the imagery was being cropped outside of the paper. Like, you can't see the entire hamburger, right? Some of the Avengers sign is cropped off, same thing with Nemo, but it's cropped off in a way that looks interesting. It doesn't look like they cut off too much of the image, just enough where you still know what the image is, but they're filling the paper very well. For Oreos, they didn't just do one Oreo, they did the stack of Oreos that's kind of wobbling off the page. That gives it some movement and interest. So just think about filling up your page. This student drew the imagery large enough, and probably, if it were me, I'd probably have to sketch it lightly and then erase some things if it didn't fit. But you could see in the back they added all these lines, interesting line work, to fill up the page in an interesting way. And these students did really good. They filled up the page, but they had a lot of background to fill because they drew smaller. I do like that they added the star pattern in the back, so it's not just plain. This one, it's not tiny imagery, but they still had a lot of background to fill. And then some students used patterns in the back. This one's awesome. They almost finished. So they could fill it up a little better. So those are the examples. So after you have your name, which is Monday's assignment, you're gonna write your name out and think of all the words you can, maybe even use your thesaurus on your phone, because your first idea is not always your best idea. And the longer you think about it, the more words you're gonna think of. I want y'all to think critically about your work. Don't just draw the first thing that pops in your mind. Think about what interests you. It's your name. How do you want to represent yourself? So that's the gist of the assignment. I wanted to show y'all how to color, and I'm not doing any complicated image. I am going to draw the most simplest images right now, kind of childlike, just simply because I want to show y'all how to color using more than one value so that you create form and it looks a little more dimensional, okay? So I'm going to color, I'll just do a leaf, okay? Here's my light sketch, and the veins in the leaf. Okay, there's my leaf. So if you're using a big pack of colored pencils, like something like this is a 48 pack of Prismacolors. Prismacolors are very nice. They're highly pigmented. And I have a lot of options, like, let me show you real quick. See how many greens there are? I could use all kinds of different values when I'm coloring so that I can make imagery look more realistic. But even if you just have a 12-pack of Crayolas, you could use multiple values to create some cool forms. So an example would be, if I think about like a spring or summer leaf, I think of green. But instead of me, and I'll show you real quick, instead of me going in here, I'll do a small one, and just taking a grass green and just coloring this really hard, all the same value. There's my leaf. It's just green. I just did a green leaf. I colored it really hard pretty quickly. I might add black for the outlines. There's my leaf, okay? It's not like uber exciting, it's kind of dark. But if I want to make my leaf look more interesting and dimensional, I could start out with, I'm going to use multiple values. So I'm going to start out with a light green. And I am coloring on the side of my paper that's a little bit more textured. If you're using your sketchbook and it's the right way, then you should be on the correct side of the paper. If you're using drawing paper from the art room, you can feel your paper and one side is slightly more bumpy than the other side, and that's the side you're gonna color on. And I'm not gonna color super hard at first. I'm gonna color kind of in circular motions, slowly. Because I want it to blend nicely. And I'm actually gonna keep the middle a little bit white because I'm gonna go in with the yellow. Yellow is right next to green on the color wheel, right? So they'll blend together. What's on the other side of green on the color wheel? Blue. So I'm gonna use this yellow to brighten up this green. Coloring in circles. And then I'm gonna take this darker green, and I like blending my pencils when they're sharper. This one's not super sharp, but I'm gonna go for it. If you're doing a 3D object, like a leaf, this might be on the ground and the sun's directly hitting it, and it's all kind of the same value, right? It might not be. One area might be in the shade. But let's say you're doing like an apple. If you are looking at an apple, how you see the color is basically you're seeing how the light is hitting the object. And I'm gonna go ahead and do these veins darker. So when I do an apple, I need to think about the light source, where's the light coming from, and I'll show y'all that in a minute with an acorn picture I have over here. And where the highlights are, where the shadows are, and I'll think about all of that so I know which areas to make lighter and darker, right? So I'm just kind of blending in areas that are a little darker, some areas that are a little lighter. I'm gonna go back in with my light green again and layer it a little bit more. And I'm building up the layers slowly, kind of rushing mine, but you could take your time a little more because you'll have the week to do it. I'm gonna come in with the yellow a little bit more to blend it out together. I'll come in with the dark green again. And actually, I'm noticing I want areas of this to be a little darker. So like I said before, yellow is on one side of green on the color wheel. And then on the other side of the green on the color wheel is blue. How do you remember the colors on the color wheel? Roy G. Biv, like you learned in kindergarten, right? Roy G. Biv. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, which is basically blue, violet, and violet. So we're doing green, we added some yellow, blue's on the other side. Instead of adding black for the shadows, because black is too harsh and I very rarely use black when I'm coloring, unless just absolutely necessary. I'm gonna use blue to create the darkest value to give a little more oomph to my leaf so it looks convincing. To create a little bit more form by adding darker shadows. So if you add darker shadows and still leave areas pretty bright and light, you're creating more contrast. So you're making it look more convincingly dimensional and real. I'm going to come back with my green again, blend in those blues a little better. I don't want it to get too dark, so I'm going to get the light green again. And if I wanted, I could even come in with a white colored pencil. I don't have one in this kit, but you could kind of use white colored pencil to blend things in better. You don't want to overuse it because it kind of can smudge it and make it look not nice. But if you use it correctly just a little bit, it'll help. Let me see, do I have a white? Here. I'll add this in the highlight area to blend in just a little bit more. So you can see there's my leaf. This is gonna look a lot nicer than just coloring everything the same color. You can do that, but if you do all dark colors like that, it's all gonna kind of blend into each other. You want some contrast. You want some lighter areas and some darker areas. Like these students, this student used mostly orange. There's a little bit of red. Some areas are colored. You could see blends of colors. Some are more just one color, depending on what they colored. But there's some lighter values like white, and there's darker values like the brown and black, so there's contrast. So it looks good. If you use all dark colors, it gets muddy. If you use too many light colors, it doesn't have good contrast. And then what I was talking about earlier with the apple, this is a good example. It's obviously not done, of blending values and thinking about shadows and highlights. It's not done. The light source was coming in here, and I still need to finish coloring this area. That's too big of a white spot. But you could see I started with like yellow browns and then some red browns, and then over here in the shadows where the cap of the acorn is over the actual acorn, I used very, very dark brown. I think I even used a little bit of black to start creating shadows, so then it looks like a 3D dimensional form instead of a flat drawing. If I had just colored all of this that same dark brown, it would look very dark and very flat. And if you use nice colors and blend in enough, you can even start making things look realistic. This is supposed to be the body of a cow, but some of it got cut off. And if you're using cheaper paper, like this is just copy paper. It's gonna be challenging to blend. It's gonna scumble if you blend. You can do it to an extent, but if you're using nicer drawing paper with texture, it'll blend so much better. One more example I'll show y'all. I'll do a flower. I'm doing just very simple things to show y'all how to make simple drawings even more exciting, dimensional, interesting. And then when you get in more advanced art classes, if you choose to do so, I'll show you videos, or you could watch them now on YouTube. There's a million of them on how to color objects so they look pretty realistic. So I'll make this a daisy, or just a small sunflower. I should have made the middle bigger. Let's say I'm gonna do yellow. Firstly, the lines are a little dark. I'm gonna dim those down because yellow is very light, and if I am coloring yellow over that graphite, it's gonna smudge. So I'm gonna get all of that off and just have the lines. You can barely see it now, or you can see it, but it's not gonna rub. I'm gonna start with the yellow. And I might not color this whole thing, I just want y'all to get the idea. And I'm actually gonna leave some kind of white areas in there. I'm coloring in the circles, I'm not coloring hard. I'm just laying down some yellow. In the middle, I'm gonna put some browns, but I'm actually gonna, you know what? Yeah, I'll start with brown. I'm actually gonna do like scumbles or like little dots, because if you look in a sunflower, firstly it'd have a bigger center, but that's fine. There's texture, because you could see the seeds. So I'm gonna do this. So if you're doing something with texture, color in a way that it looks textured. If you're doing a dog or a cat or grass or whatever, do your textured lines. Like let's say this was dog fur for a dark dog or a bear or whatever. I don't know what you're drawing. Do the texture, right? So I'll do the texture here. And then I'll come back in with the black. So once again, I'm using multiple colors to add the illusion of dimension, form. So it doesn't just look flat. This is how your drawings are gonna look a little bit more advanced. Usually when kids first start, they'll do simple shapes and they'll just color everything the same color. That's fine, that's a starting point. Now we're trying to do things a little more advanced. So our drawings look more advanced. Okay, so for the yellow, I'm actually gonna add a little bit of orange, not too much. And if I was using my Prismas, I would have different values of yellow. Like there's yellows that are a little bit more orangey yellow, like a yellow ochre, and then there's brighter yellows. I'm using Crayolas because some kids might only have Crayolas at the house. So I'm showing you how to do it. I'm barely adding some orange. I'm kind of starting more in the center and then going out. I'm using the side of the pencil lightly and kind of shading in circles so it blends in. And I'm rushing this. You could take your time on yours. And you know what? It doesn't matter if my petals aren't perfect, because if you actually go out in nature, very rarely do you find a perfect one. Actually looks more realistic when you're not so worried about it. Because if you do something like this, it looks more fake or contrived, because that's not really usually how flowers look. Some kind of look like that. Or if you do something like this, that's not really how flowers look either, right? But you don't always have to draw things realistically. I'm going in and I'm pressing a little harder. I'm not pressing super hard. And in some parts, like on the orange parts, I'm pressing harder because I want it to blend. But like up here, I'm still not pressing hard because I want some parts to be lighter so it looks like highlights. So even this looks like it's popping, it looks good, it looks a little more dimensional. And as I said before, if you're going a little more advanced, you might want to use other values if you get colors besides Crayola. Like this is a Prismacolor, to just give a little more shadows in certain spots. And then if I was doing this for my name tag, perhaps I would put the leaves behind it so it fills the page, because these are kind of smaller. I'm just showing you how to color. So I hope that helps. The last thing I'm going to say before I get off is yellow is a light value. So perhaps if you do something behind it, maybe you do a leaf like I was talking about. I don't know, maybe it looks more textured, a texture leaf. And you start coloring. I'm not going to do the whole thing. You might want to get darker when you're coloring near the petal, because that petal would leave a shadow on the leaf, right? So I'll just show you really quick. I'll do a darker color, and I'm making this one a little darker so that it contrasts well with that yellow. Let me come in with this just a little bit, and I'm rushing it. You take your time. And then I would get the blue again, not the black. The black's too dark. Get the blue. And right around the petal area, I'll press just a little harder so there's a shadow, right? And then if you do that kind of stuff all over your paper, I'm gonna come back in with the green. And then the light green. And you know what? Maybe I will add just the tiniest touch of black. And then blend it in. That's going to create a shadow effect that's going to make everything pop off the page a little better. So that's how you color at a more advanced level. I hope that helps. That's it for now, guys.